Welcome to the Musecast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Dan, I think I just figured out, like, sometimes I wake up and I get going in my day and I just feel like something's missing.
Really?
I just figured out what it is.
What is it?
Figured it out. It's
the fingers. Yes, it's go time.
It's go time. That's what I need. So let's work. How can you simulate this for me every day in my life so that I know it's time to go, Shauna? Time to get going.
That's a really good idea because, like, boy, I could make a lot of money on that. You know, like if there was the Dan Kent finger app, you know, where it's just like every morning you get the notification, like ding.
Yep. Oh gosh, Dan, we could be onto something here, and you need another revenue stream because you have not done quite enough.
That's right. Yes. So.
Well, all of that to say, hey, welcome to the Musecast. Happy Tuesday, everyone. In case you didn't know, that's Dan Kent. I'm Shauna Bourne, and we are here to continue the discussion from Sunday's sermon that, oh my goodness, Dan Kent gave. And so, welcome. Good job, Dan Kent. Woo!
Thanks, Shauna.
The Absurdity of Judgment. That was a great title.
Oh, good. What do you know? Let me tell you, the people might not know this, but I discovered that I was going to be preaching Saturday morning at 5:20 in the morning. So I only had like 10 hours to get ready before our Saturday practice. And so I just kind of pulled that out of the air. And whenever that happens, you're just like, I hope this is good. I hope this is a good title. I hope, you don't have as much time to cogitate and just, kind of dwell on these decisions, Yeah. So I'm glad that you thought it was a good title. So
it was a great title. You are good at that, coming up with clever titles for sermons and taglines and stuff. So good job. And good job on your sermon. I know that it is hard to step in at the 11th hour, especially when you're, like you said, you're stepping into something that is Greg's wheelhouse, but you did it beautifully. So
thanks.
Are you, so this is what we do. So Dan's going to give a summary of his own sermon. We are going to give Dan opportunity to add anything that maybe we didn't get to hear on Sunday after he's had some further reflection. We'll banter back and forth about some thoughts we have. There have been some comments and questions pop up on the website. So we'll just kind of take a little journey today on this absurdity of judgment and see how it goes. Sounds
good? Yeah, that sounds great.
Okie dokie.
Well, yeah, the summary. Well, let me just say this first. It's so hard to, I don't want to say it's hard, but there is some intimidation, and you know this because you've preached on the Woodland Hills stage. It's like you're sharing a stage with Greg Boyd. Greg Boyd is he's just so gifted, and he's he's a really rare, he's in rarefied air in terms of his intelligence and his wisdom and his just stage persona and all of that. And so there's already some intimidation to kind of be on this is the same stage that Greg is on, and then to only have 10 hours to do it, that kind of ups the ante. And it's in a topic that happens to be one of his kind of wheelhouse topics, like you said. So, and
you had to follow up all of the acrobatics that he did.
Yeah, right.
This week. So there was
which was amazing.
Dan.
Totally. But it was also a fun challenge because, let's see what I can do with given these constraints. And so that's sort of what I was facing. And so what I ended up doing is I tried to talk about something that I know that Greg wasn't going to talk about. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at the role of hierarchy. And to get to the role of hierarchy, and hierarchy is just this assumption that some people are better than others. There's a scale of good people up here and not so good people down here. And by good, that can mean all sorts of different things. But the point is that there is a hierarchy. And to get at that, I talked about the primary symptoms of a hierarchical society is inferiority and superiority, or shame and arrogance. And so I told my locker room story about my first encounter with pretty significant shame, relatively speaking. And then I talked about baboons. And you're laughing at my locker room story already. That's great. Just like my junior high peers laughing at me. It's just always, the people are always laughing at Dan. but then I talked about baboons. And then I just, boy, this is the first time I've had this where I felt like, I talked about shame. I didn't really talk about superiority. And on Saturday's practice, Mary and Greg said it would be really good if you had a couple examples in the middle of your sermon. And I didn't really have anything, just again, shortness of time. And so I kind of felt like, it would have been really nice to come up with something here. And like right on stage, I just had this, oh yeah, I've forgotten. I shared it here on the Musecast a while ago, and it hit me on stage. I should share this. And so I talked about, my high school graduation and the student who had cerebral palsy, who fell, and there's me laughing at this poor guy, for the whole world to hear. And just that arrogance and that superiority and that kind of like trying to establish myself above this poor guy. And then I looked at the disciples and how hierarchy and this hierarchical thinking is ingrained in the disciples, and how Jesus is trying to confront this. And then we moved into the closing of the sermon where I kind of talked about GAP, which Greg introduced a couple of weeks ago. And it's been a really great kind of way to kind of steer what do we do with all of this. And so I just talked about GAP again, but from the perspective of these hierarchical kind of systems and way of looking at the world, and how we can help or use GAP to kind of push back against hierarchical thinking and this idea that some people are better than others and so forth. And so that was pretty much the structure of the sermon. And I felt really great with how it turned out, given the constraints. And, the other thing too, is like I said in the sermon, I've thought a lot about these things for a long time, and it really felt good to have an opportunity to share some of these ideas in this series, because I feel like they fit pretty well here. Mm-hmm. So that's my summary. What did you think?
I thought you did a great job. I always appreciate transparency and vulnerability. Don't know that I ever need to hear the locker room story ever again for as long as I live. But I can just, you painted a picture. you painted a picture that,
you know what?
Yeah.
You know what?
Wow.
Here's some controversy. All right. Here's some Woodland Hills controversy. Ooh. Right here.
Here we go.
After I gave the practice run through with Greg and Mary, Greg said that he was an early developer, and he was one of the kids who would make fun. And this is what, Shauna, this is what they call them. They call them smooth boys.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And Greg was one of the bullies that I was, running and hiding from. And now we're co-workers. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Isn't that something? Now you're having to step in and help him out when his physical body is failing him.
There you go.
I mean, I don't, draw your own conclusions, people.
That's right.
So so beyond that, what I will say is, this is what I really enjoyed and found intriguing, was how, you started with the story about the baboons. And I think everyone could see that and say, how ridiculous, how sad that, the whole idea of the alpha and the runt. But what I love is, I'm going to use the journey language again. You took us on a journey of, like, everyone can see the absurdity of that. And then you took us on this journey of realizing how easily we too can get tripped up when you talk about the ladder and hierarchy and feeling superior than others. And even your poignant, sad, but very revealing story about your high school graduation. If we are not mindful and careful, I feel like we use those words a lot. If we're not mindful and careful, we too can be in this game of judging worth. That's exactly what we're doing when we're doing the hierarchy thing, right? And when we're stepping on people on the ladder to get a little bit higher, or when we feel inferior. And so I really appreciated the way that you laid that all out, because like I said, you took us from something that was obvious, like, oh, like hopefully people recognize that that's sad about the baboons, and and hopefully people realize that's not a society that we want to be a part of. But then by the end, my hope is that people realize, man, how easily we can be participating in such a society because of the way that we think of others and judge others. So kudos to you, sir.
Well, good.
So with all of that being said, and all that you were able to put in, here we are a couple of days later. Are there things that you wish you could have tackled or unpacked a little more or added to? So this is your opportunity, Dan.
Yeah. Well, there were a few things, and some of the stuff that I wanted to get to that I couldn't. That was sort of the gist of what a lot of people have written in about, and so I'm going to save that. But there's one other part to this that I wanted to get to, and I had to cut it. And that is the guy who studied the baboons. His name is Robert Sapolsky. And you can watch him on YouTube. He's got a lot of great lectures. I think he teaches at Stanford. And it's weird because like I had seen some of his videos and I thought, wow, this guy's really smart. I gotta learn more about him. And then like in a totally different context, I read about him, not knowing that, oh, that's the same guy until
the
just
baboon
after
guy.
The baboon guy, right?
Yeah.
But he originally went, like he and I said this in my notes, but I don't know if I actually said it on the stage, but I felt like it's so cool to see a guy who's like, because I feel like I'm kind of strange, like I grew up, I had a very strange upbringing, and this guy is stranger than I am. And because he, like when he was a kid, he dreamt that he was a zebra and he was like running through Africa, and he would keep having these dreams like this. And then his mom brought him to this natural history museum, and he just like, he saw these kind of what's it called? Taxidermy type things of baboons, these stuffed baboons basically. And he just like fixated on these baboons, and he just had this sense, it seems almost prophetic, like there's something about them that I need to know. And kind of the backstory there is that he was really depressed, and he started to have increasing depressive symptoms when he was 13, 14, 15 years old. And then it got pretty serious when he was in college. And somewhere along the line, he just kept coming back. There's something about baboons that there's an answer there. And so after college, that's what drove him to go to Kenya, is this sense that there's something there for him. And it turns out when he saw Job, this runt baboon, it really resonated with his own experiences, because he was in, I can't remember where he grew up, but he was one of the only Jews in that area, and he sort of became like this runt. He sort of became this person that everybody treated as less than, and he viewed himself as less than, and all of that kind of stuff. And he saw that in the baboons, and it just really struck me that, you can have like baboons where they're all genetically almost identical, and yet still somebody becomes a runt. Well, then now look at a culture where you have, you've got like Irish, and you've got Swedish, and you've got Jewish, and you've got all sorts of different people from different parts of Africa. You've got Native Americans. You've got all of these different, very different sort of subcultures. Of course, the power structures and the power dynamics are going to create not just runts, but entire groups of people that are treated less than. And I really marveled at how that he looked at that, and he saw that and applying that to America and where we grew up, and how entire groups of people, or maybe even genders, can experience that type of denigrated status, and this kind of default denigrated status, and it kind of creates these inherent obstacles, as if life isn't hard enough already. Now you've got these extra sort of obstacles and weights that you carry around your neck. And so that was really fascinating to me, and unfortunately I chose to cut that to make the whole sermon flow and work. But yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of a newscast, because we can dive into those things. I think tagging along with what you just said, it just is really resonating with how I've been feeling since I listened to your sermon. And I'm not, okay, I'm going to speak right now to those of you who may be the superiority feeling, the, you know, you're all that in a bucket of chicken and a tub of grease. Like, maybe that's not your vibe. Maybe you're a part of one of those groups that Dan just talked about that had been, for a variety of reasons, marginalized or whatever. I still think, first of all, yes, all that is wrong and sad. And like Dan said, the world is already hard enough without those power dynamics. And yet I still think that if you have been, I'm going to use the word victim, or the receiver of the bottom end of some of those power dynamics, I still feel like this message is for you to also examine your heart and your character and your life and your actions to see maybe where in your own world and your own space, how have you played into power dynamics where you lessened someone else? It's possible. It's possible to have been marginalized and then to marginalize someone else without maybe even realizing it or that being an intent. And so that's something that I have soberly been reflecting on since your sermon. I cannot stand when people are mistreated. It just, it saddens me. It angers me. It's all the things. I can't stand it. And yet I sense God and his sweet spirit saying, okay, so let's look at in ways in which maybe you participate, maybe without realizing it, but you are a part of a system. And so again, not to place blame, but just to you know, make it real. One more thing I want to say, Dan, is that the other thing that I thought was so powerful was when you talked about attributes and how many times, like, it's what we do. We do not zoom out, like you said. We hone in and define a person by this one thing that we see without recognizing that there are however many hundreds of attributes, like you said, that comprise that person is comprised of. And so that was a real, again, like coin in the slot moment for me. Like, oh yeah, that was good. There's no question there. Those are just my rambling thoughts and
that's
and
great
admonishment.
Well, I loved what you said too about just, you know, that reaction that you have to people who are being mistreated or oppressed or whatever, belittled. And then asking the question, which is such a spiritually mature question, is like, okay, obviously I have this reaction, but maybe that what's going on there is bigger than just the moment that I'm looking at. Maybe there is this bigger system that is creating all of these moments. And I just think that when you ask that question, you open yourself up to potential compassion for people who are making those judgments. And for me, like looking at, you know, teenage 18-year-old Dan laughing at this guy with cerebral palsy, I can have some compassion recognizing that as much of a bully as I looked like, I was profoundly insecure. And I was participating in this kind of system that I just learned accidentally by living in this culture. And I just think that is so profound. And it's there's so much opportunity for mercy and compassion, and also finding ways to diminish the power of the system that creates those moments that you get repulsed by so much. I loved that reflection that you had there regarding the attributes. I would say I don't think that you could really count all of the potential attributes that a person could be defined by. And the fact that we just hone in on a couple is really tragic. And, you know, like even how I've thought about this is that, you know, you look at, like, if let's say this is 1875, okay, it's the year 1875. And you look at American society and you say, who are the alpha baboons here in this society? It's going to be the guys who are strong. It's going to be the guys who are tall. It's the guys who have good backs, who can, you know, work the fields, build things, you know, stuff like that. Those are the guys who are going to be the alphas. Well, now let's say 2020, who are the alphas? it's not the big, strong, muscular guys. It's the people who have math skills and computer skills. And those are the ones who are buying yachts and flying, private jets and stuff like that. It's, society changes and these different attributes get emphasized over others. And like society reacts by exalting the people who just accidentally have those attributes. And yet the people who get exalted by the arbitrary circumstances of where society is at, a lot of times they can become very arrogant and they think that they're better than everybody else, when in fact it's just this accidental moment in history where this dumb variable, this dumb attribute just so happens to serve the greater good in a particularly unique way. And being able to recognize the infinity of these attributes helps us to not become arrogant and puffed up by those types of accidents. One more thing about that. Even things like I've thought about like competitive sports and how, just watching professional football, it just drives me crazy where, these they'll mouth off to the other team and they'll posture and they'll just act like I'm all that. And a lot of times they'll do that when they gain a first down in football, which is just not that big of a deal, but they'll still do this big celebration in your face kind of thing. And it's like, really, I mean, does a first down have to inflate your ego, but then you look at the Special Olympics and you say, okay, these guys are not nearly as good of an athlete as these professional football players are. They don't have the strength. They don't have, they have all sorts of limitations that professional athletes don't. And yet when you watch the Special Olympics, there's hardly any ego in there. And it's just, they just play these games just for the fun of playing. And there's this purity and innocence there that I just absolutely love watching, because they don't cock off to one another. They don't posture. They don't do any of that stuff. And so it's like, okay, okay, great. You are faster and stronger and whatever, but look at how your ego wrecks the whole thing. Here are these people, their ego does not wreck it at all. And there's something better about that than even professional sports. And so, yeah, thinking through with attributes like this, it helps me in so many different ways.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those, because you didn't say a ton about it because of time, but this is going to be one of those things that are going, like you said, it's going to impact so many other areas. The other thing about Special Olympics that you brought it up, I love how they just cheer for one another. Like
totally.
They are just so loving and encouraging with one another. It is the sweetest, purest thing. I absolutely love it. I want to circle back, and hopefully I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save it for my nugget. So, okay, this is what we're going to do right now. I do really appreciate how you tied this all back to GAP. Getting all your life from Christ, agreeing with God that everyone has unsurpassable worth, love, the unsurpassable love equals unsurpassably equal. Like, again, just these little, like, you were dropping nuggets all through your sermon, Dan. And yeah,
that's because I had a lot of practice here on the Musecast. That's
see, we prepare you. We prepared you. And then praying for our enemies. And like you said a little bit ago, we have gotten some comments and stuff. And so I know you've addressed some of that, but is there anything in the comments that we've seen online in relation to your sermon that you would like to comment on, or do you feel like we've done that justice?
No, I think I would like to, because what a lot of people are saying, and we're talking about the kind of the framework or the foundation of judgment is sort of what Greg and I have been kind of chipping away at. And one of the legitimate kind of concerns that people have been raising is that, well, I mean, we need to judge. We need to hold leaders accountable. We need to, stop oppression. And so we need to confront behavior that is ungodly. And especially now, we have like, in current news, we've got the SBC doing all of these kind of devious things to keep predators from being exposed and things like that. And it's like, people are sick of that. People are sick of leaders, abusing their power, abusing their authority, and people are hungry for those leaders to be held accountable and to be challenged. And to that, I say, amen. Yes, we do need to do that. And so what these people are saying is that, well, we're judging then. And Greg is going to talk a lot more about this for sure. But the one thing I want to say now is that, yes, we do need to hold people accountable and we do need to challenge these different behaviors. But what we're trying to show when we show the thing beneath the thing, as Oshita has so eloquently put it, is to show that you can have two people who are trying to hold a leader accountable, and they're saying the same things and they're doing the same things, but their hearts could be in profoundly different orientations. They could be coming underneath from two radically different spots. One person can be looking for an opportunity to take a leader down so that they can simultaneously move up. Another person can have be secure in Christ and to be looking for ways to protect the oppressed. And so, where our hearts are matter in the long run, matter a great deal. And that's sort of what, I was trying to get at with this sermon and what Greg has been trying to get at. But yes, I think we will get to, what is judgment? What is discernment? Is it appropriate to judge our leaders in our community, how do we hold them accountable without, doing something that's judgmental in this way that Jesus warns us against? And those are all legitimate concerns, and we will get to those more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dan. I think that's always a good clarification to make, because it inevitably, anytime we talk about this kind of stuff, people do wonder, and they want to know, well, what are you saying then about some of these systems or power dynamics in leadership that have gone really, really awry? And so I think I'm so glad that you guys are asking those questions. I'm so glad that you're thinking along with us and desiring to learn with us, and we'll get there. I will say, for me, I always have to remember people, like a single human it is different than their position, than their action, than their power. And so I always have to try to differentiate between that. The person does have unsurpassable worth. Their behavior, their position, the power that they're displaying may be very, very, very contrary to what God has for them. And they need to change. Systems need to change, but people have unsurpassable worth.
Yep.
So,
yeah. In that spirit, I will say that here's the problem. In looking back at high school Dan, who was laughing at this guy who fell, it would have been good for high school Dan to have somebody hold him accountable and to challenge him on that behavior. However, high school Dan probably would not have received it. I did not have the maturity and the perspective to really receive such a challenge. And so that's the dilemma that we're all in. Yes, we all want to hold people accountable, but we can do that from different starting points, from different hearts. And also, we're holding different types of people accountable at different places in their walk. And so it's profoundly nuanced and complicated. And that's why I've always said that the kingdom of God, it's advanced citizenship. It's, we're doing things that go beyond, I think, the script of evolution. It really is like higher air. So
amen to that. This is something it just popped into my mind that I wanted to say to everyone. And Dan, you didn't know I was going to say this, and it really has nothing to do with your sermon. So I am sorry for that. I just wanted people to understand that you and we sit down and we have this conversation for the Musecast, but we do that at an earlier time than it shows up on YouTube. And we did that intentionally so that we could be online and engaging with folks while they are watching. Sometimes that means that Dan and I are being, our normal, regular selves, that we try to be jovial and we try to have intriguing conversation and we laugh because that's who we are. And that happens. And then by 4 p.m. when the Musecast airs, something horrific has happened, down in the state of Texas. And it could just seem like we are so tone deaf and just insulated. And I just needed to say, we do these earlier. We record earlier in the day on Tuesdays so that we can engage with folks online. And that's all I wanted to say.
I hope that's not a prophecy of something that's going to happen this afternoon.
Please no. Enough. Gosh, it was, So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
That's good.
Okay. public service announcement over. Dan,
yes.
Do you know what time it is?
It sounds like it's nugget time.
It's nugget time.
Well, let me see if I have anything, because I sort of spilled all my beans, during the sermon, and so I guess what I would say is, the whole attributes thing, that I wrote a lot more about that in Confident Humility, but I do think in terms of a practical activity, it's been the most effective of the 5 tactics that I have in here for the long run, because the more you kind of understand all of your kind of attributes, the less anything critical. It's just like, because if you don't have that zoomed out view, a person could criticize something and it can be like a metal blade stabbing into your heart, because you only focus on 3 or 4 attributes. But the more you zoom out and see how rich and complex you really are, the duller any one complaint or criticism is going to be. It basically just diffuses, anything, and it makes you invulnerable to criticism, or at least less vulnerable to criticism and things like that. And so I guess I would just reiterate that as to, in your journaling time, in your reflection time, when you're going for a walk, when you're, driving home from work, whatever, just think about all of the things that you can do and all of the skills that you have and all of the abilities you have. And it's pretty amazing what we're able to do.
It truly is. It truly is. My nugget is that I want to go back to the G in GAP. And Dan reiterated this in his sermon on Sunday, but to get all of our life from Christ. And that can sound trite, but it's so important, because when you're getting your worth and your value from the author and finisher of our faith, it makes a huge difference. And how that pertains to what Dan shared, and even into the attributes discussion, is that when we're getting our life from Christ, we are filled with the truth of who we are as defined by God. And it helps us to not fall into the game of trying to discern and judge where we fit in the hierarchy of the world. Like, are we better than this person? Oh, we're not so good. Oh, I'm a little bit more talented. Oh, but not as talented. Oh, I'm intelligent as, but not at, like that whole game. When we're truly getting our life from Christ, we can opt out of that kind of stuff. Yep. And then to follow up with that, I just want to say, because I said earlier, sometimes we do slip into those times. Sometimes we may find ourselves being like a young, immature, and I don't say that rudely, just like in high school, we're immature, right? And there were wounds and there were needs there for Dan. And so, but he acted out of that by trying to be superior to another classmate and laughing out loud in an inappropriate time. We've all had some sort of experience, maybe just define it for yourself. We've had a moment in our life where we've acted out of not our identity in Christ, or we didn't know our identity in Christ. We acted out of woundedness or hurt or a need. And I just want to say to have grace for yourselves in those moments, because we have these things that bubble up to protect us when we're not getting our needs met in the right way. And we have these actions and these little protectors in our life that will do and say things that maybe we are so mortified by. But have grace for yourself. Again, just take all of that to the Lord and allow Him to do a work there. But always, always, always come back to the foundation of getting your identity from Him, because that's the only way in which we'll be able to walk out in fullness who we are meant to be.
Yeah, that's really well said. That's beautiful. Okay. What a great way to end it. That's nice.
There it is. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, let's give Dan Kent a hand. Thank you, Dan, for that message. And you guys keep reflecting on it. Keep asking the Lord what He wants to show you in regards to what Dan shared. But also come back next Sunday. We're going to keep going in this series, and then circle back with us next Tuesday as we continue the conversation. Catch us here, catch us on podcasts, but just tune in. We love the Musecast community. Thanks so much, guys. We appreciate you all.